San Francisco, California, this is What's Left, a political discussion between myself, Eduardo Abarca, and Andy Lipson, discussing and challenging some of the most pressing issues on the left as it relates to current events. This week we will be discussing the US American actress, comedian, writer, television producer Rosanne Barr, and the controversial remarks she made on Twitter on Tuesday, the 30th of May. It stirred up a frenzy in the media, as well as many people going after her for what she said. But also, for us, we will be discussing the reaction on the left and whether it's something that we are policing, or whether we are trying to have this identity politics issue continue to come up. Do you want to say something about that?
Well, I would say it wasn't just controversial, her comments, like the tweet that she did. It was racist and it was ignorant, and that is, the tweet was racist. And it was racist in terms of the comparison of this Valerie Jarrett to, comparing her to an ape. That's ridiculous, and there's a history of doing that with African American people, and whether she was ignorant of that or not, it was just ignorant, and it's something that should be called out. The other part of it was the whole Muslim Brotherhood comment that she made, that Valerie Jarrett, I think, has Iranian parents, and so Rosanne Barr is basically trying to criticize her as like Muslim Brotherhood, trying to use it as a criticism to almost associate her with terrorism, I suppose, in some way. That's how I take it, at least, to try to defame her or say that there's something wrong with her by virtue of that. It's ignorant, one, because if she's Iranian, then more likely than not she would be Shia, and the Muslim Brotherhood is mostly Sunni. That shows that Rosanne Barr doesn't know anything about it. But the bigger issue is Rosanne Barr has been a long-time activist against the wars. And when she does stuff like this, she's basically supporting the US war effort on the war on terror, because she's whipping up more of a frenzy around being Muslim as somehow being terroristic. And the Muslim Brotherhood actually put up opposition to, well, I don't want to get into that, but I would just say that, or I may get into that later, but I would just say that she should be called out for this, no question, both as racist, bigoted, and promoting war, and promoting the war, promoting U.S. empire by throwing Muslims under the bus.
I personally think that for ABC to have canceled her television show was appropriate. I also think that anytime you have some of these big influential cultural icons or celebrities, I think that they should know that as a public figure in the public, they should have consequences for their remarks. I do think it is very hypocritical that ABC fired her. It may have something to do with the current management of ABC. I know that on the leadership team there's an African American woman that definitely has influence for the cancellation of her television show. But for me, I think that Rosanne Barr is just a reflection of how, because she's a Trump supporter, of how she's just outside of that Hollywood liberal left. And I will say, though, that it is, I think, hypocritical that ABC canceled her, because ABC did know that she was already doing these tweets way before she did this on the 30th of May. She has a history of doing it. She said many things in the past before. This is not the first time. I'm pretty sure ABC was aware of it when they decided to bring her on into the network. ABC might have thought that because there is some Trump support in the public here in the USA, that maybe they needed to have a diverse voice or diverse sort of individuals in in the media, such as Rosanne Barr, because of who she is. She is very different from most liberal Hollywood left. Yeah. But obviously she came under fire for it, and ABC, I think, felt the pressure to have cancel her television show.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree about the issue that I want to talk about with regards to this isn't the question of the wrongness of the statement, the fact that she should be called out about that, the fact that her colleagues did that, and I think that's appropriate. Her colleagues on the show did that. I don't agree actually with the canceling of the show. I think, to me, that shows, like, there are other people who support the Democratic Party, other liberals who've done really, Jimmy Kimmel did a whole number in like blackface, and never even, I don't even think it got criticized, let alone his show canceled. If you make these wrong steps and you are supporting the Democratic Party, then you're given a pass. But Roseanne Barr dared to break from the Democratic Party, basically calling Trump the lesser evil to Hillary Clinton, which I actually think has some merit. And because of that, she's being kind of tarred with the basically as a Trump supporter, because the whole notion is Trump supporters are racist, Democratic Party supporters are not. That's the mythology, and they're playing. That's the liberal media and really the neoliberal order, which has been backing the Democrats around the big money that was behind Hillary Clinton, who never got over the fact that Trump got elected, are coming after her, and we're also threatened by the fact that her show was very successful. And it's a show not just about her Trump support, it's a show that shows a working class family grappling with Democratic Party supporters, Trump supporters, grappling with issues of her son is a transgender on the show. But I think, again, the media was shocked that this Trump supporter and this show, which had an open Trump supporter on it, would garner such a massive audience. And they once again misread things by thinking that, that again is all the racist, that half that is Trump supporters, they're the racists, and the people who back Hillary Clinton, the Democratic Party, aren't. I would contend that part of my issue with this thing is that this notion that racism can be best identified by the words that people use is wrong. Of course, language matters, but this country is not racist because this country is not racist because of just the language that people use. This country is racist because of the 2 million people put in jail, the vast majority of them are African American. 80% of black men in cities have a criminal history of some sort, or in many of the cities in this country. 1 out of 4 blacks live in poverty versus 1 out of 10 whites. This country has institutionalized racism that needs to be addressed. And what going after people like Roseanne when they make these stupid and racist comments by essentially throwing them under the bus and saying, we don't have anything to do with you, it allows this country and allows the media, it allows the system to essentially clean its hands and say, we're not racist anymore because we've taken care of these people. We've pushed them aside and we're clean. We had a black president at one point in time. That black president actually deported more immigrants than George Bush before him. Although he had many words of anti-racism and talking about racism, he deported more immigrants. He wasn't like the criminal, under the Democratic Party, it was actually the expansion of the prison industrial complex happened under Clinton, right? So the Democrats might mouth words about racism, but they themselves actually expand and help grow the institutions of racism in this country. Barack Obama with expanding the war on terror from a few, with the drone program, as well as the escalation in Afghanistan. So the Democrats and the establishment which backs them currently is very good at trying to use words that make them sound like they're not racist in this kind of post-racist society, but while maintaining those institutions that keep racism firmly entrenched in this country, and actually I think it's getting worse. So I think there's two things here. It's a distraction. Going after Roseanne here is both a distraction from the real racism we have to contend with in this country that affect immigrants and African Americans. And it makes it impossible to actually discuss really racism because it puts it in this, you said this and you said, it's almost like you better be careful what you say, because if you're with the wrong group and you say the wrong things, we're kicking you out. And it's kind of like a witch hunt sort of environment. And frankly, we won't be able to have any meaningful discussion about racism, at least among workers, in that kind of environment. So I think that's what some of my initial concerns about this. Admittedly, this has been an issue. I know I haven't felt right about this, because like there was something about it that really felt like they were just coming after her in a sort of a witch hunt sort of way, even though I don't agree with what she said. I think they very much could have kept her show, and there was a lot of people on her show that were upset with her. They could have made the next episode something where each of them essentially speaks to that issue and what they think about this issue as it relates to being, anti-Muslim, or being, saying racist stuff. And that would have done, I think, a lot to actually engage a discussion, instead of saying, if you dare get caught in saying one of these sorts of things, you're out. We don't have anything to do with you. And that's the way we're going to be anti-racist. That's the way we're going to end racism, is by identifying essentially the deplorables that Clinton was talking about and removing them from the table, and then the rest of us can all feel good about ourselves. It's a joke, because we live in a deeply racist country, and unless we attend to those things and identify those things and challenge those things, the institutions of our criminal justice system, housing, wealth distribution, everything, we're not really dealing with racism in this country then.
Yeah. And I think this also calls into I do agree that racism there is racism that is outright racism, like in your face racism. Then there is commercialized, whitewashed, filtered racism that is not completely in your face, outright. And she has the courage to speak her mind and to say what she thinks, right? I don't encourage it, but it also calls into question what we consider to be politically correct things as well. I think this is a discussion that we need to have as well as it relates to it, because politically correct terms and the way that we speak is a very hot debate right currently now, as this US president speaks right out of his ass without even caring how he says it. And a lot of people question whether we are infringing on our right to freedom of speech or not. And so I think it relates, and I think I also want to touch on that as well, since you mentioned something about people going after people, or have like a witch hunt after people because of what they say. And I personally do think that there is, I'm not talking about just Rosanne Barr, but I'm also just talking in general, that I do think that people have to be careful on how they deliver things, because things have historical contexts and it affects people, and they're very sensitive topics, especially when it comes to race, or it can also be sensitive when you talk about gender. But I think race, because most people, men and women, identify one or the other in groups, in or out groups. I think people feel it more sensitively, especially as patriotism is on the rise. I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
Well, let me say something about first the notion of her having the courage to say it, and then I'll come back and make sure I understand the other stuff you said about the sensitivity that is required at the same time. So I don't think it was courageous for what Rosanne said here. Like this tweet she sent off, like to throw Muslims under the bus is an easy one in this country right now. The profiling Arabs and Muslims is like now accepted because we're trying to keep our country safe. So Rosanne did not show any courage in using the Muslim Brotherhood, or really even the ape comparison or whatever. It was just dumb. And she actually has a past of fighting around left issues. You know, she was the Peace and Freedom Party candidate, which is a socialist party, in 2012 for the president.
Yeah, so Bill Meyer.
Yeah, and so like she's actually it's dumb because she's misrepresenting herself with her stupidity and with her ignorance about the fact that these words are going to be used not just against her, but against potentially people if left unchallenged. So she was dumb for saying it. She deserves to be challenged, and she deserves to be embarrassed by the people around her who probably respect her, and they could have called her out, and others could have called her out. The idea that you cancel the entire show and all the people around her and who work with her and under her now are out of a job, maybe they'll find work. That's ridiculous, and that was done merely to basically, that's part of the political battle between those people, the establishment, which I think supports the Democratic Party and wants them coming back, and is challenged by Trump, and they're seeing that, you know, they want to basically push her and anybody they believe that are Trump supporters to the margins. And the issue, there is also this issue that I think you're getting at, that we have talked about before, of the chilling effect that happens in these conversations around race, around politics, that I would say that racism exists within the working class. I don't think racism, like, I think those ideas are pushed on us, but the racist ideas exist within the working class. The way those are going to be challenged ultimately is like common struggle, being on the picket line together, stuff like that. But in the absence of that, we need to be able to talk with each other about, okay, what is wrong with what's being said here? Why is this hurtful? Why is this divisive? I mean, why is racism bad? In my opinion, racism is bad because it divides workers. It keeps us from identifying we have a common interest and a common fight to get, a common fight to work against our bosses or our capitalists. And so racist statements, racist actions, all work against us, work as workers. So we need to basically, that's going to have to be part of a discussion, which means we're going to have to hear people say things that are racist and either ignorant or bigoted. Either they know it's bigoted or they don't know it's bigoted. And there's going to need to be a venue for us to discuss that. The challenge for me is, well, how do you have it in, like, so that like people of color can actually engage in that discussion and not be like, well, this is effed up. I don't know. That's where I have a question in a sense. But I feel like the way things are now, this is true both on the left and I think in this country, which the left is a part of that, is people are afraid to even talk about these things because they are afraid that they will be labeled. If they say something wrong, you're going to be labeled as a racist and therefore marginalized by virtue of that. And that's a problem. Like, I think that's a problem if that's going on.
Two things I want to, first of all, when I said courage, many Trump supporters that are public figures, celebrities, politicians, or people that are well known within larger communities, feel as if, especially the West Coast and the East Coast, okay, bigger cities, feel as if they are not able to speak their mind because they are they are in a climate where the majority of people, especially cities, like I said, are liberal.
Yeah.
And when I said courage, I do not mean to give her any credit for that courage in the sense that she deserves to be credited for it. And wow, that's wonderful that she was courageous to speak her mind. But to paraphrase many of public figures in culture, pop culture, Hollywood, many of them feel that they cannot speak their minds, or they will be challenged. There will be repercussions, and their line of work will be in jeopardy because they are Trump supporters.
Yeah.
And that is what I meant when I said courage. The second thing is about the repercussions. I think that there is a level of responsibility when you have such an enormous amount of influence and power, because influence is power. And if Rosanne Barr and other public figures are spewing things, saying things without any sensitivity, and you have that, we don't have any followers. At least we only have, I think, for now, 5 subscribers.
I follow you, and you follow me.
So you know, really, we can speak our minds. What I'm trying to say is, people who are in the media, people who are constantly on the face and covers of literature, media, radio, whatever it is, they deserve to, they need to have some level of responsibility for what they say, what they do in the public, because that's their profession. They've chosen to be on the spotlight for everyone to see them. And this is influencing the way that our children are seeing them, and television, or other, even adults, just in general, people, get influenced. So I don't know what those repercussions could look like if cancel. I do think I am agreeing with you that her television show on ABC is a very a working class television show that is inspirational. It has a lot of dynamic characters in there that especially reflect what some people might say that they don't see themselves reflected on television.
Right.
You know? And I do think that she deserves some credit on the way that it was produced, the way that it has slowly evolved over time. She's been an actress and a comedian for a long time, and she has her credit to be due as well for what she has done and what she has produced. I don't know what the repercussions would look like for a public figure. I think that I said that there has to be some level of responsibility for what you say and do. What that looks like, if does it look like it's a slap on the wrist, or does it look like you're just excused because you have a very hard-working background with all the things that you've accomplished, a successful career? I'm not sure. So that's just something to think about when we talk about people, especially, like I said, continue to say public figures on the spotlight who say these kinds of things. Right. Anything you want to say about that?
I think so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here's what I would say is, of course, you and I don't have a large audience, but we have talked about how we think we can at least debate some issues and do that in a way that we would want to see modeled in society in some way, and say other people to do that. If I said something dumb and hurtful, you'd want me to apologize. You'd want me to apologize and be like, I'm sorry I did that. And then secondly, you want to see me not do it again.
Right.
To show that apology is sincere. Right?
Yes.
And so I would honestly, I think for those figures who we say have a responsibility, I would say that. I would want to see all that reflected. Yeah, you speak your mind, but then when you get called on stuff that you know is dumb and you finally realize is dumb because you shouldn't have said it, then apologize and don't do it again. If you do it again, people aren't going to believe the apology. That's what happens. If I apologize to you and I keep doing it, I didn't apologize. I just tried to cover my ass. So that's where but that's where that would create an open environment for a discussion, for people to speak their mind, potentially make mistakes, but then be held accountable to them in the form of an apology. Or if they keep doing it, then it's like, well, we can't talk anymore. Or what are we going to, we have to do something more. But it's very interesting to me that two people who were really excoriated for speaking their minds, and I don't agree with everything they said, happened to be two people, Kanye West and Rosanne Barr, who were Trump supporters. That tells me that this is about a political climate that's really about a fight between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party in preparation for the elections, while simultaneously hiding the fact that the U.S. is fully immersed in institutions of racism without talking about them, and merely saying, well, we deal with racism by throwing out the people who say racist stuff, and doing it somewhat selectively. So to me it's a bit of it's an illusion that's being cast by our system, by the ruling class, by the media, to spread a myth about our society that somehow suggests that racism is a thing of the past, and that we're just kind of mopping up now. And no, it's not at all. It's getting worse. And it's not getting worse because of Roseanne Barr. It's getting worse because of the Democratic Party plus the Republican Party. But the Democratic Party has advanced racism and made things way as bad, if not worse, than the Republican Party. And that's an illusion that liberals don't want. They want to act like they can fight racism by electing Democrats. They don't. You actually have hastened and continued and spread the divide between rich and poor, spread the divide between whites and blacks with wealth distribution through a period where the Democrats actually ruled. And that's something that, if we're going to challenge racism, that's the discussion. And those are the things we have to draw people's attention to. Not to deflect from stupid statements that are made, but the statements should be a model of, well, how do we discuss racism? How do we discuss race and sex and gender and nationalism and immigration without just flaming and saying, well, you said something I don't agree with, and the statement might be racist, so you're a racist, so get out.
And then the conversation is stopped.
It's over, right? And honestly, that's what liberals and a lot of the left does. They use the label to end the debate And it has basically meant we don't even know what's going on in the minds of workers, so we don't know how to engage them. And I think we need to just deal with the fact that not only workers have racism, we have ways in which racism has influenced us, so we need to have a dialogue. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be struggle that really ends this. I mean, that really challenges racism in this country. But dialogue is going to be part of this. And
I think that segues into the political correctness thing, right? We were discussing that. When we feel we are stopped because we cannot say something that might come off wrong or take offense, there isn't that dialogue for us to have, because people are so worried about saying it correctly or saying it in the way that is accepted by the majority, right? And I have mixed feelings about it. I do feel, I personally do my best to speak in a way that is inclusive, and to some other people that comes off as me trying to continuously correct them or not speak their mind or even stop their freedom of speech. I'm not interested in hindering anyone's freedom of speech. I simply have such a diverse background with diverse friends that I'm always thinking constantly of everyone to be inclusive, but I certainly don't want to stop the discussion that I have with other people who are definitely living in other conservative areas where people do speak a certain manner, a certain way. Even family of mine that live in Mexico that sometimes say things that they would have said that in front of other people around my friends. They'd be hanged. Right? So, I mean, how do we go about it? I mean, if you want to segue into that, if you want to have a discussion about that, if you have anything else to say. Right.
No, I think you have hit on a question I have. So I remember reading, and I have a question, maybe some thoughts, but I have a lot of questions about this too. The same question, some of the same questions you do. Mm-hmm. I do remember hearing or reading something, I don't know where. Are we going to link it? We're going to do a link?
We will link.
We'll do a link.
Did you see my last video? I made sure that it was all right there, and Andy did not want to, but I take responsibility for making sure that it was all there.
You should read everything that he puts up. It's all good. It's all good. It makes him seem smarter than me.
No.
Anyway, it was.
You read something.
I read something that talked about the discussions that were had in juries when they're private, and when they were all white, the discussions that they had were like the things that were said by an all-white jury were very different than when there was one or two black people in that jury, and they would check themselves in that context. The reality is that it's good that they check themselves, but that checking should probably be going on all the time. The fact that they don't check themselves does mean there's a problem in the way we discuss things, you know? And I do agree with the notion that
Can I say something?
Yeah.
There have been people who have said so many things about Mexicans in front of me because they don't think I'm Mexican. And I just look over, oh, okay. Because it's true, people will say something that, they don't, if they're less likely to say something in front of other people if they know they're speaking about that group, right, and that group is present in front of them.
Right.
Go ahead. So you agree with what?
But I will say, okay, when I was younger, I said all sorts of effed up stuff. The N-word, and not like N-I-G-G-A, like used it in the racist way when I was younger. Homophobic things, F-A-G, used like, and eventually different people called me out on some of these things. And other times in a combination of being called out and then seeing that, like, I lived in neighborhoods where cheaper rent, which tended to be with other African-American people in St. Louis. And I was like, people would say my neighborhood was bad. And I was like, my neighborhood isn't bad. I feel very safe there. Mm-hmm. So a combination of being called out on stuff I was saying, as well as my own experience, ultimately did challenge my ideas and make me say, well, why am I saying these things? Why am I thinking these things? And so what I agree with in the notion of what I think is the spirit of PC-ness is we all can learn how to speak in a way that is more inclusive, and we'll get better at that if we are in conversations that include the different groups all in the same room. Mm-hmm. And particularly, people who haven't experienced it. I haven't experienced racism. We can get a lot of education about how does this sound, and I think we should listen to that and hear it. But in order for me to know what I need, you to know what I need to hear, I need to say the thing that's kind of like it's offensive, for you to educate me. Now, it's not your job. It could also be my job, but it has to be said. If it doesn't get said, then it just goes underground. And then you have this kind of what I think is a racial divide, a divide around race and racism that is existing within the class that's not even being spoken about. The other thing that bothers me about leftists and liberals, and when we talk to people about race, is we tend to do it from the vantage point of, I'm not racist and you are, like from a very elitist way. And that's just BS. And that really turns people off.
Expand on that, to be safe.
I think it's like in engaging people where they don't like what somebody has said, they have this kind of sense of, they almost like they want to puff themselves up by showing their own outrage, to show that they aren't racist, and kind of shame a person for how dare you kind of say that, as opposed to, wait, why are you saying this? Like, don't you, to try to really bring them with them, and maybe, I don't know, there's just a different way that could be discussed. I just feel like, and I wish I had examples right now, but I just feel like the left and the liberal way of often doing this is very elitist and very much like, I know better than you and I'm going to teach you, as opposed to we're in the same fight together. Comrade, maybe you don't want to be saying that kind of stuff. That the idea that we should be thinking of ourselves as comrades in struggle. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. And also I want to touch on a point that you made about how sometimes something along the lines of how people of color shouldn't be educated or feel like they're educating people on certain topics. As a person of color, I've heard that said so many times, where people get exhausted in trying to explain or give context or try to help people to understand about issues such as homosexuality, cultural appropriation. I've heard it said, or the context of, the historical context of some remarks. I personally, I understand where a lot of those folks are coming from. I personally don't mind educating. I think it's just a natural, that's part of me, it's just personal, but I do understand when it falls on people of color or other people with other identities that they have that are stigmatized in our society. I understand that they feel it's a lot of work to walk through life as for in this case, a person of color, through a society where they're going to be judged, and on top of that, still trying to educate the public about sensitive issues. For me, it's not a problem because I just feel like a living educator, just all the time trying to educate and to get people to be aware of the things that they say and the historical context that is being said with those remarks. So I just want to say that I think that for some of us, it will take a certain amount of us to meet halfway with other people who have said some bigoted things. You mentioned how your background, who were those people that helped you and supported you? How would you have come out of that had you not had the support or been called out by other folks? Even if it didn't feel good for yourself, or it made you feel a certain way, or maybe it made you feel like more strong to keep those certain ideas about yourself. I think somewhere around you, or in the timeline of your life, someone there was there to support you in thinking that this was not all right, and why it wasn't all right, and giving you that support to know why, right?
Yeah, I mean, the example with using the N-word was my brother. My brother called me out because I was using it, and he was just like, "What are you doing, Andy?" It's like, "This is just nasty, and you're better than this," And I felt he basically called me out, but I did not feel it. I did not feel like he was saying, "I'm better than you." He was just like, "Why? This doesn't make any sense. Why you're saying this?" And he was almost like asking surprised, and it wasn't like he was better than me. He was just, and at the time I pushed back, and I had my reasons, but it stuck with me really for the rest of my life. I still remember the conversation where and that conversation didn't convince me. It was the seed that he planted that caused me to be like, "What am I doing?" you know, because I think your ego gets in the way,
Yeah.
you know, and things like that, and that's what happened there. But it takes a while for your ego to kind of come down again and realize that the person's right. There are other examples, and in all the examples that I can think of, where it's about this question of arrogance, and I don't know if this is true, but I tend to think that it's like, okay, I'm going to make a blanket statement that might not be true, but like I'm really talking about white people engaging white people around these questions of race and how to say things, stuff like that. That's where I often think that's where that arrogance really can come in the most. That's just me talking off the top of my head, because I feel like it doesn't come in. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's one thing that comes up for me. Not sure that's true.
And when a white person tells another white person, there is that sense, other friends have said this as well, that there is a sense of like, you're making me feel like I'm the racist and you're not, because we're both white. I think that's what you're getting at. Yeah. Whereas when I talk to you as a person of color, I think that what could happen is that you feel guilty. Whereas I think, I'm not sure, because I have corrected other white people. I've never corrected you, by the way.
You don't think so?
No. I don't think I've ever. And I'm not interested in correcting. Maybe the word is not correcting. The word is making you aware of something.
Yeah.
So
right. Exactly.
So I just want to point that out. Sometimes you see again, like we're talking about correct forms and everything.
Yeah.
And the minute I say, because I'm someone that does believe in, because I study somewhat linguistics, and I do think that language is how we formulate our thoughts. When I say something in Spanish, it comes off very different from how I say it in English, and because of the structure of things, such as when I say, and this may be off topic, but it does matter. When I say in English, if someone was to drop a vase, someone would say he dropped the vase. In Spanish, you would say the vase got dropped.
Mm-hmm.
In English, you blame the person, and in Spanish, you say what happened. And that changes in linguistically, those things change the way you think in the world. So there is a difference in how you see the world when you use language. So when I say correct, I'm getting really precious right now.
Yeah.
And when I say the word correct, I know people are going to feel correct is the opposite of wrong. And people will feel like I'm correcting them, making them feel wrong. And I'm not interested in making anyone feel shameful or making them feel guilty for what they say. I am interested in making people understand situations, again, philosophically, taking away morality away from it, but seeing things as they are and what impact they have when they say this in the world and how that makes other people feel. Still doing my best to take away the morality of it, because once you start hitting into morality and making people feel bad, that's why people don't want to have discussions and shut down. We've talked about situations, but it comes about family and religion, and I have made you aware of differences in family and religion, family dynamics when it comes to my background, which is I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. Those were things I was trying to make you aware of, had nothing to do with like the pressing issues that we're discussing. Not to say that religion isn't a pressing issue, because it does affect everyone, and interpersonal relationships do affect everyone. But I feel that you are quite, your background in socialism is such a strong factor in how you see the world, and you have such a, I don't know your past. Maybe that's also another reason, right? And I could see you differently. Even if you tell me you have actually told me your past, I still don't see you differently, because I know you for who you are now. And maybe that's just me, because once you tell me your past, I'm not afraid. Even if my friends or anyone who tells me something they've done or something they have said or something they believed in, I don't feel it's my right to start judging them because of something they did in the past. As we were discussing with public figures, if you can apologize and you can say something that you can remediate or clean up from your past should not hold you. That is how we move forward. And that's how I think people who say bigoted things, racist things, insensitive things, make fun of other people, they should. I have a friend of mine, I will not say his name because it's important, but he has said offensive things to me, very offensive things to me, because of the color of my skin, and he was joking, there was a lot of friends involved, I was a teenager, and it was very hurtful at the time, and I wasn't able to express to him how I felt. But we had the conversation years later, and it made him feel terrible. The thing is, I wasn't interested in making him feel terrible. I was interested in making him aware that some of the things that he says on the back are still resurfacing and manifesting in other ways. That's what we were having a discussion about. So anyhow, back to everything that we're saying, you have never said anything like that. I have felt that way.
Yeah.
Regarding your conversations about what the difference in energy and dynamic and relationship as it is from you to another white person being corrected, let's say, as it is from one white person to, or a person of color to a white person, I think there is a difference. There is a huge difference in how it is felt. Mostly, and this is what you're getting at, that the person is very defensive on this end, and because there's guilt coming from someone that looks like me. When it's another white person, there is this competitive viewpoint, like, wait, you know, like, we have the same background, but you're not going to be better than me, and that's where the arrogance comes in and the ego. Well, arrogance stems from the ego. Yeah, I don't know. That's all I'm trying to say.
I don't like. I'm not sure about but I'll say this. I think,
edit.
We'll see. But I think the thing you said about awareness versus correcting is probably a good framework for anyone who's talking about this. If I'm talking to another white colleague, I would want to be made aware of how my comments are ignorant. And I would hope that if I was engaging him or her, if she's white, that she or he would feel like I'm making them aware, not being like how ashamed you should be. And for socialists, awareness means we are on the same side. Why are you saying or doing things that are actually dividing us? We need to be on the same side if we're going to change this world and fight together. Mm-hmm. That's the awareness that we're supposed to bring to this. So I feel like the idea versus correcting, which is very shame-based, and can I bring it what I think it might be full circle to Rosanne Barr?
Yeah, go everything.
Because like this shame that they're putting on Rosanne Barr, while the system itself, which is shaming her, is 1,000 times more, not just racist in words, but racist in deeds. The fact that system is purging her and calling her racist and trying to clean itself up in doing so is completely, to me, like hypocritical. It's attempting to deflect the attention away from the real problem, which is society, and which is capitalist society in the United States, and put it on this person or these individuals who might say something racist or ignorant. And that is where, instead, if we were doing it, what I would say in a better way, it would be like, wait, Rosanne, make that person aware, like her colleagues could do. That was really bad. That was really dumb. You hurt our cause, and now you need to do something to make it right.
Yeah.
And ABC coming in and just canning her and her whole crew, to me, that's about politics, and that's about trying to divide, like basically support a Democratic cause and push against what they see as a Republican cause. And they're really the same side anyway, but good cop, bad cop. Video. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And there are some things that I will say that, in speaking about Rosanne Barr, thinking back, I feel as if maybe I did not say something or cover something, and if I need to expand on it, if anyone has any comments in the bottom and they want me to say something, I can expand on what I said, especially because I talked about what repercussions could look like. I'm not necessarily saying everyone should all of a sudden be fired, canceled, because they are saying something that is contrary to what I believe in or something that I stand for. I don't, and so I want to make sure that's clear, constantly reflecting back of what I say, because it's permanent.
We have recorded.
So I can expand more on it. I just don't think that it's necessary for me to do so in the conversation, but I wanted to insert that. Yeah, so I agree with you, Andy, as far as that. Where I think people have a hard time with is when they take things personal. Those people cannot have a conversation without taking things very personal and I know many friends that just don't want to have a conversation or have a dialogue, an open dialogue with other people, because they are not able to have, they're not there mentally, they're tired, people are struggling, they're just trying to go to work, and then they hear a lot of shit being said to them. I probably should not say that, you should censor it, otherwise our videos are not going to be seen. They're a lot of people say, a lot of, they're in life and they're feeling all this pressure from economic pressures, racist pressures, sexist pressures in the world, that they don't want to put up with people and they don't want to have that dialogue, and they're like, why do I have to take care of you? You understand? And maybe, and I understand that completely, and that is why I think a lot of discussions aren't being had, because there isn't open dialogue. That's one thing I just wanted to say. I understand both sides.
Yeah.
I hate saying both sides. Everyone's coined these words now. I cannot say alternative. I cannot say both sides. I cannot say facts. Yeah. No, seriously, I think that's why people shut down. Anything else about Rosanne Barr? Rosanne Barr,
or
political correctness.
We've touched on it. And I think we're going to talk about racism, political correctness, and it's going to come up again.
Yeah,
so,
it will.
I'm fine with what we've done so far.
Okay. As well as we'll discuss racism, just racism, in one video. Remember I said that when we started this, I really wanted to have a discussion about racism and what that means.
That's what I wanted to talk about. That's partly why I wanted to bring up the Rosanne Barr issue, so as we could start a discussion about racism here today.
All right, good. Yeah. So we will have something more in depth in another video.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I think we went over our time. We don't really have a time.
We don't have it, but how do we end this? Or the same old way, right?
We're not doing scripted, so
okay,
we have
well
nothing
then,
to script.
yes, we do. We have a protocol,
right?
Which is
what we can discuss for the following week.
Yes.
One thing I will say is, if anyone out there is really paying attention to these discussions, I know one person is. That's not you. Someone else outside of you.
Three.
We will do our best. I'm committed to making sure that these are sent out weekly. So I'm going to organize my week, like I mentioned to you, and I will try to organize my week so that we can send these out weekly and have a consistent upload for people to watch or listen to as they drive or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Are you thinking, what would you like to discuss next week, though? You're not sure?
I'm open to it.
Okay.
Let me think of it. Go ahead.
Okay. You want to think right now and then?
Yeah, I'll be thinking.
Okay. The one that's coming to mind is North Korea.
Híjoles.
Is what's happening with this back and forth on the talk. Like, it's canceled, it's on, it's canceled. I think there's some interesting stuff going on that I'd like to think about and talk about.
We can discuss North Korea. Yeah.
Or
no, I like that one. I don't have anything planned.
Okay. And remember last time I made fun of you for saying we would discuss either the privacy or the socialism, and you said, but it could be something else.
It could always be something
and
else.
It was something else, so you were right.
Yeah, you see. One thing I am interested in, like I said, to discuss fully what socialism is. And I mention this because we say it a lot. I don't have to speak for it. I'm not a socialist. But you say it a lot in our conversations. And I think we owe it to everyone to have sort of a foundation, or not a foundation, but context when you say that.
Yeah.
I think people are going to, there's so much, like I said, about what they think that is, especially after Bernie Sanders. It needs to be clear what that means.
For me.
For you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That could be.
And possibly even have a discussion with 2 or 3 other socialists. If you don't want to, that's fine. What is the difference? You want to see? I'm interested.
I don't want to share.
I want to see. I have a friend who's a socialist as well.
Oh, okay. Well, that would be.
So I have questions for both of you.
Yeah.
And you both have very strong, passionate stands. And I think it's only fair for everyone else to sort of be. I think both of you share more in common than you do differences. But I do think that there is a lot for to say about it, and we can invite a guest, or we can just have a discussion with you.
Okay. Well,
I don't care. The thing is, it needs to be clear.
yeah.
I like clarity, as you can see. I like things to be text. I like things to be added, links. I like all the information to have some background.
We'll figure it out. We also don't necessarily have enough mics for more than 2 people.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But anyway, we're going to figure that out.
We'll figure, yeah. Well, either way,
Yeah.
to clear up your stuff. Yeah?
Okay.
That doesn't
All
have
right.
to be this video. It could be another time.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it for this week then?
That's it.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Ciao.